Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm pretty excited because today is the day we're going to start the LSD swap. Yep, you heard that right. If you've been following along, I've got a 2000 Chevy Silverado 1500 extended cab. It's known as the ugly truck, and right now it's got everybody's favorite engine under the hood, the 5.3 LM7, or as many just refer to it, an LS. I know it's a popular engine. I know it can have a pretty good horsepower potential. You could put a turbo on it. You could do a million different things to make 10,000 horsepower for like $300. But I want to do something a little bit different, and that is what explains this guy right here behind me. That's right, an 8.1 liter, 496 cubic inch V8. And in my opinion, it's a much cooler engine than the 5.3 or any LS that I could swap in its place. Now, obviously this 8.1 right now isn't going to make a tremendous amount more horsepower. It's rated at, I believe, 340 horsepower to the 290 of the 5.3, but torque is where it gets it. I think 455 pounds of torque is what the 496 is rated at out of the box. And of course, we're going to improve on that. You guys know me, you know what's coming. It's probably going to have some sort of forced induction on it at some point. But before we can get to any of that, obviously we need to take the old engine out. So that's where we'll start today. So I'll claim that I'm a fairly detail-oriented person, and I have a pretty good plan in terms of how this swap is going to be executed. And all the upgrades that I've done up until this point were in preparation for a much larger and more powerful engine. You know, things like the 4-inch exhaust. Definitely overkill on a 5.3, but perfect on an 8.1. The 4L80 automatic transmission. Again, this 5.3, especially putting down like 230 horses at the wheels, there's no need for it to be attached to a 4L80, but since the 4L60 was blown and I needed to replace it anyway, why not just upgrade right out of the bat? You know, the rear end, it's got 430 gears in it. You might argue that it's a little bit too steep for a relatively low revving 8.1, and I'm actually kind of on the fence, but I have confidence that it'll work pretty good with the 8.1 because I'm going to do some valve train changes, different camshaft, different valve springs, maybe different intake and cylinder heads down the road. So I think the 430s will be perfect, especially with how much torque this engine is going to make. Yeah, I probably don't want to drive it 3 states cross country, but that's all right. Other than that, everything is just kind of simple removal. So the first thing I got to do is get all this electrical disconnected, get the cooling system disconnected, get the cherry picker on here, and yank this 5.3 out. Because there are so many different connections to undo, the wiring harness is usually the first thing that I'll start on when tackling a project like this. And as always, there are 2 separate ways you can go about disconnecting everything. One, you could kind of leave the drivetrain in one big piece. That's the engine and the transmission connected together, and leave the wiring harness exactly where it is and just disconnect it from the truck side of things, underneath the fuse block, at the computer, and there's a few other connections. However, I want to leave my transmission underneath the truck for 2 reasons. Number one, it's going to locate the engine, so when I have to build the mount, it'll be exactly where it needs to be. And number 2, well, I don't think I have enough ceiling height to get the engine and transmission out in one big piece. So the trans is going to stay, but that means I have to disconnect the harness basically from every last connection point on the engine and the transmission, plus there are a few branches that go down underneath the front of the oil pan all the way back to the starter. One kind of comes up underneath the coolant reservoir for the mass air meter and the coolant level sensor, and there's finally another one that goes down the passenger side frame rail for the O2 sensors, plus the rear branch that goes down to the back of the transmission and for the driver's side O2 sensors. Now, I think I've got all the last connections and everything's kind of pulled up out of the way. It's a big mess, but everything's undone and I can move it far enough off to the side so I get the engine out without interfering. Now it's time to move on to the wet systems. So this is a tool that I found out about not too long ago, surprisingly. I've been working on cars for a long time, and typically when I go to do the quick connect snap ring style fittings that are like in the transmission cooler, usually what I'll do is I'll take a pick or a small screwdriver and just kind of pull out that little 3-prong snap ring so I can disconnect the line from the fitting. Now this tool, I don't know where you can actually buy it. It came with a radiator that I bought not too long ago. It's got 3 little notches in it, and basically you put it around the hard line, push it in and twist it, and it allows you to disconnect those quick connect fittings without having to pull the snap ring out and risk losing. And I've done that before. You know, you pull it out, you don't have a good grip on it, it just goes flying, never to be found again. So like I said, I don't know where you buy these. You know, if you find a set, let me know in the comments below, because there are some different sizes that I would like to get, but just something cool that I thought you might like to know about. So now the radiator should be able to come out. Now the next thing to come out is the AC condenser, but before you get too worried, there is no refrigerant left in this truck. The AC hasn't worked for a long time, and I already checked it beforehand, so we're good just to pop these lines off. Otherwise, you should do the responsible thing and go have it professionally evacuated and trapped, because they say this gas is bad for the atmosphere or something like that. So do the right thing. Also, if you put the nuts back where they belong, you'll never lose them. I know what you're probably thinking right about now. You're saying, well, that's really not the quickest or best way to remove an engine from a truck, or really any vehicle for that matter. And you're right, there are much quicker ways. My personal favorite involves a length of chain about 40 feet long. I've seen a couple guys do this with pretty good results. Basically what you do is you bolt the engine onto the chain in about 3 or 4 places in good, nice, solid mounting locations, and you wrap the other end of the chain around a tree or some really heavy, immovable object. Then all you gotta do, start the car up, throw it in reverse, and get going about as fast as you can in reverse, maybe 15 or 20 miles an hour. And as soon as that chain gets taut, it'll yank that motor out in about half a second flat. Now, I haven't actually tried that myself before. I prefer a little bit slower method, but by removing the core support, the cooling system, the grille, and all the stuff off the front of the truck, it gets me a lot of access, especially when I'm going to have to fab up the motor mount on the passenger side. Basically, I think the 8.1 mount is in a little different spot, so I will have to do some cutting and welding on this side, or so I'm told. So that's another reason why it makes a lot of sense for me to get all this stuff out of the way, is because I'll have a lot of room to work without having to lean over the core support. Not only that, when I raise the engine in and out, I don't have to go all the way up and over the core support, risk damaging it or the radiator or any of that other stuff. So again, is it the most efficient method of pulling a motor? Nope. Not by a long shot, but it's the method that I prefer. Well, working today certainly makes me appreciate air conditioning and lifts, because it kind of sucks working on the ground. You seem to get a lot dirtier, a lot hotter, sweat a lot more, but that's all right. The job got done, and that's, I guess, really all that matters at the end of the day. Now, I did take some quick measurements on the 8.1, and just like I suspected, I am going to have to modify the passenger side frame mount. It needs to be moved forward 3 inches. The driver's side, it'll work exactly where it is, so we'll take care of that next time. Now, I'll promise you guys this, no LS is ever going to make it back under the hood of ugly truck. But if you're doing a swap in a similar truck, like say a 5.3 to a 6.0, it's a direct bolt-in replacement. So all you got to do is dump the new motor back in, although I don't know why you'd want to do that when you could put in a clearly superior 8.1. But anyway, I want to say thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you next time. We got some more 8.1 content coming, and hopefully before too long, we'll get this thing back on the road with a lot more horsepower.